eventually I see the eradication of gender. So I believe we're going to live in a world where we are no longer described as male or female, but we'll just be parts. Someone will have a vagina and a penis, and that's it. There's no labels and all these ideologies that we have put on that part. That's what I ultimately see. I don't think I'll see that in my lifetime, but I believe that's where people are going.
What's up, everybody? My name is Brazil, and welcome to my podcast. Today, we have a very special guest with definitely the best outfit we've had on this podcast, for sure. This is a person that I've seen on TV with my girlfriend, and we're fans of. And we love your energy. We love the love and joy of life that you exude in your entire existence. This is Laganja Estranja.
Yes, God. You see, Brazilians always get me. I swear.
You're about to go to Brazil, right?
I am. I'm returning back after November. November was when I just went in 2021. I turned it out. I won the lip sync competition, so they are bringing me back this time with the winner's belt and a new cast of other Drag Race girls that I'm traveling with. So I cannot wait. I love all things Brazilian.
When are you going?
Your podcast included.
All right.
I am leaving next Wednesday, the 15th.
Oh, so you're going right away.
Yes.
And when are the shows?
So the shows are kind of spread throughout. We're doing 5 different cities. We start in Sao Paulo, then we move to Buenos Aires, then we do Chile, then we do Mexico, and then we do, what is the last one? Chile, Santiago.
That's already so many amazing places.
There's 5. There's 5
Wow.
amazing cities in Latin America. I'm so excited.
Now, how's the scene out there? Are they mostly fans of drag, or is there a good local drag scene popping in those places too? Do you know?
So there's both.
Okay.
When I first started going back to Brazil in 2013, that was the first year I went. It was the year before I'd been on RuPaul's Drag Race season 6. And I actually went with a fashion company called Melange,
Okay.
where I did like a fashion show. And I've always been obsessed with Brazil. And I knew at that point, like if I could get myself over there and get my art seen, that when Drag Race came out, it would be that much more incentive for them to bring me back over. And that's exactly what happened. So I filmed Drag Race in 2013. After that, I went to Brazil for the first time, walked in this huge fashion show, made a stir, made a ruckus for myself. And then back in 2014, when season 6 premiered, they had me come right away to Brazil. So
Wow.
I've been going ever since.
Now, for those who don't know, explain in layman's terms, what is drag?
Okay, so drag literally stands for dressing as a girl. That's where the term originated from, back even in like Shakespearean days when women were not allowed to do theater and create art. Men would dress in drag to portray the females in the musicals or in the plays. So that's kind of where drag started and where it came from, which was men dressing up as women.
Right, even ballet originally, right? Only men were allowed to do it, like
Absolutely.
back in the day. Yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
So as drag progressed, it became more of an art form nowadays for anyone. You don't have to be a male dressing as a girl. You can be, a biological female dressing up as a glam female. You can be a non-binary individual giving a club kid look. Drag has really grown over the years, especially because of RuPaul's Drag Race, which I think pretty much exposed our community to the mainstream.
Yeah. And is it only considered drag if what you're dressing up as is feminine?
No. So there's things called drag kings. So
Oh.
this would be when a cisgendered female or a trans woman or pretty much anyone at this point, like I said, you don't have to be the opposite sex. So
Okay.
before, the idea of a drag king, right, would be a woman dressing up as a man. But now, because gender is so fluid, those rules don't really apply. It's just about the art form of drag. So that's going to be lots of makeup, hair, costume. I always like to say like Lady Gaga is a drag queen for those people who don't have a reference to like what drag is.
Right.
Lady Gaga did, at least back in the beginning of her career, drag. So it's, over accentuating one side of yourself.
I love that. And we all have many sides of ourselves.
Totally.
Even somebody who's straight still has feminine and masculine balance inside of them.
Absolutely.
We all have those sides. And society now is becoming a lot more accepting.
Right.
With
That's what I
us,
was going to say,
yeah.
is I think society has a lot to do with how we currently express our gender and also where we're moving towards, which is, I think, the eradication of gender. For me, growing up in Dallas, Texas, I had no idea what someone who is non-binary or trans is. And B, I definitely didn't feel like I had the safety in my life to express that side of myself. So it took me a lot longer in life to figure out that I really, gravitated towards the feminine. Even
Yeah.
as someone who identified as queer, there's always still been this stipulation around this idea that as a man, you're not supposed to be feminine. And that's why I love drag, is because for me, it really freed that for me. It allowed me to, well, ultimately become who I am today.
Yeah. How would you describe who you are today?
Well, I describe myself as a goddess.
Yes.
But no, I identify as a trans woman. I came out last year on June 15th of Pride, which was a very big moment.
Came out as trans.
Came out as trans, right? So that's something that I've known for a very long time, but it's been really hard for me to accept. I mean, even now that I'm out loud and proud, there are still days where, living in a society that we do today, even though we're growing and shifting our ideology, it's very difficult. I mean, even here in LA, I was talking to my girlfriend at lunch today and telling her, like, most recently I had an experience where I went into a female bathroom and was confronted by another female, basically saying that it was inappropriate for me to be in that restroom. So that was obviously a very difficult moment, but a teaching lesson both for me and for her. And luckily, we were able to walk away respecting one another. And I think for the most part, she understood where I was coming from and realized that I'm not a threat to her sexuality, to her children. This is just a way of expressing. And I think there's just been a lot of negative connotations with being gay or being trans. I think a lot of gay men are seen as pedophiles, and can't work in working with children. It's like I see cheer or dance. A lot of times gay men get this rap that they're pedophiles, and that's why they become an instructor, is so that they can prey after, young boys. And it's like, that's so
It's almost like
wrong.
it's assumed that there's a hypersexuality.
Right, because our sexuality is different than the norm,
When really, even anybody's capable of doing.
Everyone's a freak.
Yeah.
Let's be real. It doesn't matter if you're gay or straight. Everyone has a freak flag. And as
Yeah.
Missy Elliott said, we're supposed to get it on.
Yes.
So I just am finally doing that more, publicly. And ultimately, I chose to come out on such a public platform because I do believe my story as a trans person is different than a lot of trans women or men. Just in the way that I view things and the way that it took me a lot longer to come to this realization. I always knew I loved femininity, but I never really knew that that was a part of who I am and not just an act, which is why I found drag. Because for me, drag was a way to explain to people, including myself, my gender.
Yeah.
Oh, I do this as a job. It's a joke. It's a put on. And through the years, I realized, like, actually, no, this is who I am. And I don't even want to do drag these days. I don't want to put on the lashes and the rhinestones and the sequins and, because I'm so comfortable in my womanhood and
just
expressing
being.
myself just like I am today.
When did you know you were queer?
Oh, gosh. Maybe 7. Like, very early on. I
Really?
knew that I was different. My parents tried me in sports and all the typical masculine things like Boy Scouts and camping and
Yeah.
fishing. And I just never really resonated with any of that. And it wasn't until they put me in a ballet class, moved me indoors with air conditioning and a mirror where I could stare at my gorgeous self, that I was like, I'm home, surrounded by
Yeah.
women,
Now, that doesn't necessarily mean somebody's queer, because
No.
there's like straight guys that like being indoors and look at themselves too.
Absolutely,
So
there's
how did
plenty.
how did you know the?
I think for me, the realization came when I realized I wasn't physically attracted to the females that I was in class with. And that ultimately I felt more like them than I did a male. So again, that's, another reason why it took me so long to discover that I was trans, because I never really suffered body dysmorphia, which for those of you who don't know, that's basically when someone doesn't feel like their body matches their soul. So I never had an issue with my genitalia. I never had an issue with the fact that I didn't have breasts, because ultimately in a leotard next to the other ballerinas, I looked just the same as them. A lot of ballerinas are flat chested
Yeah.
and have a very slender body with not a lot of hips or butt.
Right.
So again, I just felt like one of the girls. And it wasn't until later in my life, where of course I was made to dance masculine, that I began to realize, oh, I am different from these ladies.
Because doing even masculine movements doesn't feel.
Masculine movements, wearing tights. Like, I've always been the one who wants to wear a leotard, a high-cut leotard, and show these legs off, So
Yes.
just right down to even the attire and, being expected to do all these tours jetés and jumps and things.
Oh, so you did ballet training for real?
Oh yeah, no, for real.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
How
I'm
many
classically
years?
trained and got my BFA in dance and choreography. So I'm like a legit
Oh,
dancer.
my mom and dad are both ballet dancers.
Oh, nice.
And my biological father too. Like I grew up
Wow,
around
in a
it.
family of it.
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
I didn't like ballet in the beginning. I'll be honest. It was a little boring. It wasn't
Right.
until college where I had an amazing professor who was very strict but very gay and very fun that I was like, wow, ballet is actually super cool and super interesting and super challenging in a great way because I love to be challenged.
Yeah.
I do. Yeah.
And where do you hope things go in the future in terms of society accepting how much of a spectrum there is in everybody?
Well, my hope for as long as I'm living, right, is to just see acceptance. Eventually, I see the eradication of gender. So I believe we're going to live in a world where we are no longer described as male or female, but we'll just be parts. Someone will have a vagina and a penis, and that's it. There's no labels and all these ideologies that we have put on that part. That's what I ultimately see. I don't think I'll see that in my lifetime. But I believe that's where people are going because this whole labeling of one another, we had to do that, I believe, in the beginning to understand one another.
Understand how different we are.
But I think now people are realizing, like, I don't want to have to do that anymore. I don't want to have my body part decide who I love or how I love. So that's where I see us moving. But I think in my lifetime, I just hope to see acceptance and hope to see people just allow each other to be. I think there's so much, at least from where I grew up in Texas, things placed on us, right? How we're supposed to act. Boys like blue, girls like pink. And I think now...
Yeah, even something as simple as that.
Yeah.
Color-wise.
Right.
Like that's
But that's
so
all made up.
Yeah.
It's all made up.
Because obviously there are biological differences between people.
Yes.
But the societal expectations are all just... That's just what we happen to be doing at the time.
Right.
Like pink is a great color. Blue's a
Love
great
it.
color.
I
Like
love
it's funny.
both.
There was this one comedian, I forgot who it was. Maybe I think it was a Brian Callen or somebody like that, who said that he felt that as a straight guy, he felt weird doing certain arm movements. He's like, I felt that my boys would look at me weird if I was doing this instead of whatever. Like
Right.
literally just how you dance at the club. There's like, are you afraid to put your arm a certain way? Because people, what?
Right.
What?
Yeah.
How limiting is that?
So limiting. And again, it really wasn't that way even 40 years ago. 40 years ago, trans people were highly regarded in many cultures.
Yeah.
What comes to mind would be the Hawaiian culture.
Really?
They have a third gender known as mahus. And it's, I'm going to butcher this because I am white and haven't have a lived existence, but I will do my best to tell the tale, which is basically this group of mahus came in on a ship into Hawaii. And they, looked like men, but they were very feminine and actually helped raise the children and helped teach the children about gender. We see this also in the Native American culture with two-spirit, which is the idea that someone isn't male or female, but they're both, and they coexist. And again, highly regarded, usually took care of children. So we forget that there is this history of gender fluidity.
Yeah.
And that's why ultimately I'm trying to use my platform to remind people, like, look, it was just 40 years ago. Like, it wasn't even that long ago that these ideas were created of pink and blue and you act tough and don't put your arms in the air and you shave your legs and armpits and must wear lipstick. These are things that someone in power, and most likely white, ultimately came up with to
Yeah.
hold us down, to divide us.
Yeah,
and
to
I think
say,
people
like,
are over
you have
it.
to act this way. You have
Right.
It's like no, not
No.
really. And I feel like it's limiting. Even if you're like a regular, not regular. What's the word? Even if you are like a cis person,
Yep.
right? You can access so many parts of yourself
Yes.
and live a better existence. Like I know for me as a man, it wasn't until I started doing psychedelics like 5 years ago, that I got deeper in touch with both my masculine and feminine, right?
Right.
I think I've always been an emotional person, but
Well,
I
you're
was
Brazilian.
Yeah, but when I did it, I just I started appreciating my masculine more because I think that also because of so much toxic masculinity, right? And misogyny, like
Misogyny.
I think there's been this like tainted perception of what it even means to be masculine.
Right.
right? To where now it's like guys are like, wait a minute, like, is it, so I'm not one of those assholes, so am I just gonna be like a little wimp? It's like, no, you don't have to be that either.
Right.
You can access so many parts of you. Like, there's times where I cry with my friends or cry with my girlfriend or whatever, and I don't feel emasculated.
Right.
Like, it feels nice to connect to that and feel and to let go and to be emotional. And there's other times where it's like, no, I'm solid, I'm here.
Yeah.
I'm on a mission and nothing's gonna stop me.
Right.
You can guy or girl can access that.
Agreed. No, agreed. I think again, it's all like this idea that we have to have permission to be.
Yeah.
That's what I hope to see eradicated in my time on Earth. I want people to just be born and be able to accept themselves. Because again, it's like I struggled for so many years to accept the fact that I am trans. And it's because of society and because of the way I was fearful that others would look at me and the fact that I thought no one's ever going to love me if I am like this. And, all these things that, again, I was just taught. And I love Gen Z for coming to TikTok and bringing out the conversation on pronouns. I mean, for them, non-binary, trans, these types of people, they're seeing as young as middle school exist with them. And I think that that is really powerful, and they're really going to change the world and our perception of just how we view each other and our permission to be.
I think that the dream that you have of the future is going to happen in your lifetime.
You do?
I think so.
I don't know.
I mean, gay marriage
Gender
was just,
neutral bathrooms for everyone. I think that's going to be a big fight.
I think a lot of the old people that make the rules are going to die pretty soon.
Sure.
In the next 20, 30 years, it's going to be the kids that are in middle school now that are going to be senators and that kind of stuff. They're going to be from that generation, And
I just think it's so ingrained in our system. I mean, think about every form you fill out. What's your race? What's your gender? It's as basic
I
as
always have a
that.
hard time putting down what my race is because I'm Brazilian, but I'm
Right.
white, but I'm not Latino. I'm from a Latin country, but I don't speak Spanish. It's
Other.
Other.
Other's what
I
you
always
put.
just other.
That's what all my friends say. They're like, I'm other. I'm like, I get it. I've just been white bread my whole life, from Dallas, Texas. But
What's your heritage?
I don't really have any. I mean, we've gone back on the family tree, and I think it's Scottish, but most of my family, white from Texas. There's nothing exciting there.
Are those eyes natural?
They are.
Are they green?
They're like green blue.
They're
I
really
wish they
beautiful
were more
eyes.
green, but thank you. Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't almost not even picture you not being this way.
Isn't that interesting? Yeah. I'll show you pictures. Full beard and was serving trade and trying to be a male model. It's like a whole thing.
Really? You were full
Yeah.
beard?
I had a full, not as quite as thick as yours. I went for more of that like after 5 o'clock shadow vibe.
Okay.
But that's because I hated a beard.
But you can grow a beard.
I
could.
can, but I'm about to change that.
Yeah? Are you getting
Yes.
laser?
I'm actually going to get electrolysis. So that's like a step further than laser. The
What's
reason I'm
that?
doing that is because my hair pigment is very light. I'm a natural blonde. So
Also, the hair's natural color too.
absolutely not. But if it was natural, it would be similar to this.
Okay.
And so I have to get electrolysis because the way it works is laser picks up pigments, and my pigment is too light. So electrolysis is going into each individual follicle and deadening it and killing it. So it's a much more
Wow.
tedious process. It's very expensive and very painful. But I cannot wait to have this done. I am very
Are you doing
lucky.
everything?
I would eventually like to get everything. It's very expensive and
Yeah.
time consuming.
You pay per the hair.
Exactly.
Per each
no,
one.
you do.
Really?
Yeah. So
Mine would be like $1 million. I'm hairy everywhere.
It's a lot. So I'm really lucky that a sister of mine from RuPaul's Drag Race started a
Really?
GoFundMe when I came out as trans, and we raised $24,000 in under 24 hours, which is just incredible.
That's amazing.
And so that's what I'm going to do with that money is get my first installment of electrolysis.
You're gonna do the face first?
face. Yes, I've been.
Will that
shaving
cover
my-
the whole face?
Yeah, it'll be like here to the neck. It'll be like this area.
I would love to get one on the neck. To the neck, always I have to shave this because
Well, you could get
Yeah.
laser. That's the thing. Many men, especially now that we are starting to be able to be ourselves and
Yeah.
being metro is cool again. Because I remember in the '90s when being metro was cool, and then it went through this phase in the 2000s where it was like, oh, you're gay if you're metro. But now I think ladies are like down again with the cause, and they're like, yes, I want my men to be well kept. And so, yeah,
I think if it's
lasers for
authentic, it's
everyone.
attractive.
Of course.
You know, because there are some people that can make sweatpants look super sexy.
Yes.
You know, it's not
I'm one
what
of
you're
them.
wearing. It's the vibe you have with it. You know, when I was younger, I used to be insecure about how hairy my chest was. I had some kids in school that made fun of it. They forgot what they were. I think they called me like bird chest. They just kept saying these things, and I was like, maybe I'm
Birds
different.
aren't even hairy.
I know it didn't make
That's
sense. I don't know
crazy.
why they said that, but I remember because I had so much chest hair, and I would feel like, oh, I'm the weird one, you know.
Right.
And I would like always shave it, and then it wasn't until I had that psychedelic experience, and I was actually with my lady over there, Yanni, and we were having sex, and I was on acid, and then I looked at myself in the mirror, and I for the first time in my life realized I was attractive.
Oh.
And I was like, I always people like me, but I thought maybe they were just saying that because they wanted something from me or whatever,
Sure.
you know? I didn't really believe that I was like that. But then when I saw myself that way, I was like, oh, I like the hairy chest.
I was about to say,
I like
nowadays
all this.
everyone
It's like-
loves hair. That's
yeah,
like hot.
I
Yeah.
fell in love with it. And that's what I was saying about, right? It's like not being afraid to touch the feminine side, right? To feel that, but also
Sure.
not be afraid, like if you want to, be
Yes.
the hairy bear, so to speak.
Yes.
Do that as well. You know, it's like a liberation of identity that's happening in culture right now.
Totally. I mean, for me, I'm the opposite, right? So I grew up with hair, and I was like afraid to shave my legs in
Really?
middle school because I thought that would make me gay and people would make fun of me. And so like, I never did that. And then when I finally started drag, you know, I would shave my legs, but I wouldn't do my arms. It was like, I can't do my arms. Like, that's really too gay. Even though at that point I was gay and living out and open about it. Like, I still had this ideology around
You were living
hair.
gay, but afraid of looking too gay.
Right, because you know,
Interesting.
a lot of times for gay men when they start drag, it makes it very difficult for them to date other gay men because gay men mostly are attracted to masculinity. So when you're over there dressing up as a lady, it makes it very difficult to attract a partner. Now, I actually experienced that myself. Pretty much since I started drag, I've been single, which is going on 10 years now, which is crazy. I was in monogamous relationships my whole life before drag, like literally had a boyfriend of 5 years. So that's been a trying and
since you
tribulation
came out
moment.
as trans and are living like drag full time, you're saying that's harder to get a gay man.
Well, so I'm saying two different things. Being trans in itself, hard to find love, period, point blank. That's just the truth. But being a gay male who does drag is also hard because, like I said, a lot of gay men are judging you for expressing your femininity, even though
'Cause
we're
they-
gay and there's like this, you know, assumed idea that all gay people are okay with femininity.
No, some want the
That's
the
right.
guy.
And I myself was like that. So when I was living as a gay man, I would never date a drag queen because I'm looking for a man. So it's like I understood where people were coming from, but then I also wanted them to love me too.
What are you looking for now?
A great credit score, a house in Malibu, and you can't have pets, but you can have kids.
Really?
I have the dog, so I don't.
You already have a dog. You don't
I
want
do,
to.
and she doesn't like other dogs, so I just see that as a conflict of interest if they're coming with a dog.
Are
But
you-
if they have kids, I'm super open.
Okay,
I
that's
love
interesting.
kids.
So, would you be more so looking for a gay man, or would you date a trans?
I don't care how they identify.
You don't.
I don't. In fact, at this
You
point,
don't have a preference for what you would want.
I think, you know, I've spent my whole life living in preferences.
Mm.
And I'm learning now that that's really a disservice to myself.
It's
and
limiting.
to like other people.
Yeah.
You know, so at this point, you know, I've never eaten a vagina, but if I meet the right trans...
Never even tasted one.
Nope, hadn't have a finger in it, came out of my mother's stomach. So I am what they call a platinum star. Platinum star. Never been anywhere near the vajayjay. But I am coming to the realization now that if I were to fall in love with a trans man, that I would be willing to learn how to do that and be open to that experience because at the end of the day, I know I'm attracted to men. A part to me does not define that man. So I'm open.
That's interesting. So
I'm
you're
open.
attracted to men.
Yes,
What if that man didn't have a penis?
right. That
You
would be
would-
a trans
you would
man.
be okay with
I
that.
am saying that I've never done that, but that I'm
You'd be
open
open to
and
it.
willing to trying. I mean, if you can eat ass, surely you can eat a butthole. I mean, if you can eat a butthole, surely you can eat a vagina. Like,
Yeah.
you know, so I'm just saying, I think because, you know, coming out trans and you know, recognizing this within myself, that all these things I thought were wrong, I'm now learning that maybe what I thought in my love life too is wrong. Now, am I naturally attracted to penis? Yes. But that doesn't mean I couldn't learn to love vagina, is all I'm saying. Because at the end of the day, as long as it's a man, someone identifies as a man, I don't care. It's just a body
Yeah.
part. I don't see it as something that's going to make or break the relationship.
I wonder how many cis women feel that way too. Because in the male community, there's so much conversation about the penis.
Sure. Well, I think for
That
males...
for you to say, for somebody to identify as a man, regardless of that. I know you're saying that you're open to it, but it's just interesting, that perspective.
Yeah. No, I have a very different perspective than a lot of people. I'm well
Yeah.
aware of that. And I think, again, for men, the whole idea of dating a trans woman, well, they're afraid that if they, like that trans woman with her penis, that their friends are then going to call them gay because now they're with a penis. And so that's what I'm saying is, for me, there's no way that can be possible because ultimately, gay men don't want to be with me because I'm a woman. So it's so funny to me that...
Would you be with a straight man?
Yes, sure. I think
Or
right.
straight.
I think I wonder. I think I wonder about the real possibility of that. I think ultimately, my man will identify as probably queer, non-binary, pansexual, somewhere in that landscape.
What does pansexual mean?
Pansexual basically means you love who you love. It doesn't matter if they're a man. It doesn't matter if they're a female. You fall in love with the person, not the body.
Isn't that technically bisexual?
Technically, bisexual is more like I like men and women. Pan is saying I don't care what it is. It could be trans, they could be non-binary, they could be
Got
man,
it.
they could be female, they could be anything. I like the soul, I like the person. Whereas bi implies more I like both men and women, but not necessarily I would date a trans person,
Do you agree with most traditional trans views? Like, do you feel that you are in a line with your community for the most part?
I would say I teeter on no. I think, yes, I agree with many, but I think I teeter on other opinions. Yeah, I think I do.
Would you mind sharing?
Well, like for instance, I think there's this big conversation right now about TERFs, which are women who are feminists, but they are excluding the trans community from their feminist activity. So,
Excluding or hating?
excluding,
Okay.
excluding.
As in, like, we're fighting for our rights here, but not yours because you're not on our team.
Correct.
That vibe.
That vibe. So, like, one of the most prolific TERFs right now is J.K. Rowling, the writer of all of Harry Potter's. She's
Right.
very outspoken about this. It's caused a lot of controversy. And so, what comes with that is this idea that trans women are women. Now, I absolutely believe this 100%. However, I also believe that trans people are really a third gender. So much like the Mahus from Hawaii or the Two Spirits from the Native American culture, it's a third gender. It's in its own space. Now, that's not to say that you can't be recognized as the sex that you see and feel you are. For instance, I'm a trans woman, so of course I think people should call me she and her and, respect my wishes and my identity. But also, I'm never going to have a uterus. I'm never going to have a period. I'm never going to be able to give birth. I'm never going to go through menopause in the traditional way. So I see the fact that we are also different than women, than cis women. And instead of hide that, I say we celebrate that. And we recognize that while our experiences can be very similar and we can be on the same team, we can also understand that there are some fundamental differences. And no matter how much we try to be the same, we just never really will be because ultimately I've grown up with a penis and you've grown up with a vagina. And that does make us different,
Yeah.
And so even though, like I said, I think we're moving into this world where parts don't define us and, it'll be different. In this current day and age, they do. And so that's why instead of hide that fact, I just try to say openly, like, just because I'm saying we're also different and we're our own gender doesn't mean I don't agree with the ideology that trans women are women or trans men are men. I do.
Yeah.
I just think we should celebrate the fact that we are different and that our journeys are different and that our stories are different because that ultimately, in my opinion, makes us that much more special.
Yeah.
Because we are telling a unique story.
It is
that
unique.
cis, born people cannot tell.
Yes, like there's things that a cis woman can do that trans women can't, like give birth, but trans women can have a whole different experience of
Correct.
experiencing living one way and then coming out a different way.
Right.
That's something that they don't have either, and it should be celebrated.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, just because I don't understand really what happened, J.K. Rowling, was she like actively trying to stop some legislation or something from happening, or did she just say her views?
I can't speak specifically because I'll be honest, I'm one of those people when I see a bunch of controversy like that, I like tap in for 2 seconds, read it, and then I'm like, okay, I know enough about it that if it's brought up in an interview, like I can be topical. But basically, it's definitely been expressing views. And what people fear is that because her voice is so powerful, that ultimately it will lead to legislation down the way.
It can influence the slowing
Absolutely.
of progress.
So while she may not be doing it directly, by her giving a voice to this, perception, she's hurting the community, which I totally agree. I'm
I
like,
could see
lady,
that.
you have millions and billions of dollars.
Because she's influencing the
Leave us
kids
alone.
who
Right.
could influence their parents who make the laws
Right.
about what bathrooms are what or whatever.
Exactly.
Got it. It's like consequential.
But that's why I think if she could be met with sort of an open dialogue about like, okay, so we're not the same exactly, but can we look at how we are more similar than we are different, and why that makes sense for us to be included in, for instance, as a trans woman, femininity and feminist practices. And I think eventually maybe someone's going to have that conversation with her, but she may be too old to sway her opinions.
What's left to do in the fight for trans rights?
Oh my God, so
Aside from
much.
social interaction acceptance, from a legal perspective,
Right.
what's the bullet points?
Laws and laws and laws and laws. I mean, there's just so many more laws that A, we have to change, and then B, we have to put in place. Like, getting discriminated against for your job, or being able to apply for, children in some states, for adopting.
Like some states won't let you have kids if you say you're trans.
And if you're gay. So that's
Just straight up, you can't even.
right.
You're
You can't-
disqualified.
correct.
Might
Mostly
as
in the
well-
South. But
Yeah.
but yeah, so there's a lot of laws that they need to be put into safe, and then there's like access. I think a lot of trans individuals have a really hard time accessing proper medicine, such as HRT, like what I'm on, which is hormone replacement therapy, or even just therapy in general. It's very expensive, and a lot of trans women don't have, or men. I speak a lot about trans women because I am one, and that's the community I really exist in. But just so everyone knows, it goes both ways. Trans men also are facing hardships when it comes to accessing medicine and support and community. And in fact, I think,
And when it comes to medicine, not to cut you off,
Yeah.
do you mean legally not allowed to get it or coincidentally in a bad position to have it?
both.
Really?
Again, depends on the state.
Got it.
Depends on the state, whether they recognize it as an insurance need, or whether they have to get it on their own. And like I said, now they have to get it on their own, and it's super expensive. And so there are a lot of organizations that are coming out and trying, like I'm actually working with one. They're called Folks, Folx. Amazing organization created during Corona, all online, available around the US, get you your hormones in under 2 weeks. Like, it's amazing. And I'm
that's
so
great.
proud to be working with them because, this is what needs to happen. And we need more access to safe medicine, because that's another issue, is that because trans individuals don't have access to the medicine like a normal cis person was, a lot of it's black market, and it's not tested, it's not regulated. And so more and more issues, happen
that's a
because
health
of that.
problem, and-
Exactly.
Yeah. I need to. Folks, you said was the name of that
Folks,
organization?
Folx. Yeah, it's
You
amazing.
should write that down. My sister's trans. So,
Really?
yeah.
Wow. Male to female?
Female to male.
Nice.
Yeah. Well,
Amazing.
now they go by Lucas.
Lucas.
Yeah,
I love it.
Yeah, they're beautiful, and it's been so interesting watching that journey because they always got along with me more. I had two sisters originally, right, and then Diana and Sophia, and then Sophia now became Lucas, and me and Lucas always were so much alike.
Sure.
Like we liked the same thing. We
Sure.
all stayed up late working. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
it's like, and now it's like we both like girls.
Right.
It's like, hey.
Yeah, you were my brother.
Yeah, exactly.
Totally.
If you had like $100 million grant
Uh-huh.
to spread around the community, where would you put it? Like I'm trying to understand, like what? Okay, so we have to get the rules passed, right?
Right.
The laws.
Right, that
There's
protect
bathroom
us.
segregation.
Yeah.
There's being able to adopt kids.
Sure.
There's access to healthcare.
Right.
Right, which is both an insurance thing and like legally they
Right.
should be able to get insurance, but then also they might just be in a position where they just need financial help.
Right. So they should be able to go to a Planned Parenthood and, get medicine just like a woman who had financial needs would go there and get.
So they currently can't.
Again, depends on the state.
Yeah, that's
So
so
California is great.
crazy.
We're
It's
great out here. They really love
wild.
us and are helping us, and lots of laws are being put into place so that trans people are protected. But, Texas, where I'm from, absolutely not.
You know, there's this comedian named Michael Che. Are you familiar with him?
Uh-huh.
Did you see his original special, Michael Che Matters, on Netflix?
I don't think so, no.
He was doing this bit where he was talking about Black Lives Matter, but he was also talking about all the different movements, the LGBTQ movements and that. And he was saying that, like, it's kind of trippy that you can say, hey, I'm for equal rights, and somebody else is like, nah, I'm not for it. Like, who's nowadays?
Right.
It's crazy. Like,
Yeah.
we're such a modern life. We're going into the metaverse, and there's still bathrooms that you can't go into.
Right. Yeah.
It feels so archaic.
It does. It does. And ultimately, you know, it's like $100,000 if I had that. Gosh, it's such little amount of
Or
money.
100 million.
100 million. Okay, now we're talking. I mean, I think I would just put a lot of that into the organizations that have done the work. Because again, you know, I'm an activist and I'm a figurehead, but ultimately I'm an artist. That's really what I do. So the best way for me to help individuals is by living my truth and showing that every day online, and then by expressing my opinions through my art. But that's not really going to change laws. It'll influence, it'll help. But that's why I say, you know, we need to trust the organizations that have been doing this forever and ever. So
So
what
folks,
comes to mind right now out here in Los Angeles would be the Trans Wellness Center.
Okay.
There's also the Latinx Coalition that are just doing amazing work. So I would definitely like give them the money because they really know how to then take it and allocate it to the best ways possible to move the community forward. So that would be what I would do. And then I would also take a chunk of that and open my own dispensary.
Hey.
That would be run by drag queens and trans individuals, but yeah, I'm ready for my own dispensary.
So, Laganja.
Yes.
When did you first smoke weed?
Oh gosh. Probably in high school. I think I was maybe like 17, 18. I'm really lucky because I was exposed to the plant in a very medicinal way from jump. I had a really good friend by the name of Lauren Glenn who loved cannabis, grew up with it. Her parent, well, actually, it wasn't her parents. It was her older brother. Was kind of like a hippie.
Yeah.
So she had been exposed to the plant sooner than I had, even though my older sister was definitely smoking pot. I just didn't know. And we were working on a dance piece. I was up to be nominated for Presidential Scholar in the Arts. Have you ever heard of this? Okay, so every year there's presidential scholars in each state where the president will choose like 2 to 4 individuals who are extremely brilliant, and they will come to the White House to receive this very prestigious award. Then there are also 25 artists who are selected after many applications to become presidential scholars in the arts.
Okay.
So the only way you can become one of these is by going through an organization known as the National Foundation for the Advancement of the Arts. It was called Young Arts back when I was doing it, but now it's NFAA. And basically what it is it's held in Miami every year, except during Corona, poor kids. And they bring all these people from around the U.S. to compete for titles. And if you get a gold or silver medal, you can apply to become Presidential Scholar in the Arts. So I was in that process and working on a dance piece that I was choreographing, and I just had a roadblock. I couldn't figure it out. Nothing was coming to me. And Lauren was like, well, girl, let's just go smoke some weed. Like, it will help you, I swear to God. And of course, at that point in Texas, my very sheltered mindedness was like, oh my God, we can't. It's a drug. Won't we smell? What will we do? The whole 9 yards. And she was like, girl, calm down. Let's go. So we did. We smoked for the very first time before rehearsal and drove around. And, you know, I don't think
You
I
were
got
in high
high.
school?
Yeah. I don't think I got high my first time, but by the second or third rehearsal, this routine of smoking before we would come in, I was feeling it.
Yeah.
And it totally helped. So
Yes.
I never really saw it as a party drug. Eventually, I would use it that way.
Sure.
But ultimately, I've always seen it as a medicinal plant to help us be a better version of ourselves.
Absolutely. What did your parents think of that?
Well, I kept smoking weed in high school under wraps,
Okay.
for sure. Then I went to college out here in California, so I was away from them and definitely smoked more. But again, social media wasn't as big as it is now.
Right.
So it wasn't like I was chiefing up on my Instagram story and my mom could see. So I kind of kept it from her. But obviously, once I became Laganja and had the national platform of RuPaul's Drag Race, we had to have a conversation about it. And you know,
Wait, so you were on Drag Race first, and then you told
before
her?
telling them I was, yeah, for sure, for sure. But by that point, you know, I had enough education to speak about the plant eloquently.
You could state your case. You could be like,
Exactly.
listen,
I
this
knew
is
the difference
medicinal.
between CBD and THC and
Yeah.
how the different, you know, compounds. What's the word I'm looking for? Particles? that sounds good. How the different particles like work together or work separately. And I was able to really come at it with education. And my parents are were high school counselors for 30 plus years.
So they've seen.
So when you come at them like with a well thought out theory and hypothesis and results, they're willing to be more open. So
What was scarier, coming out queer or as a pothead?
definitely coming out trans was the scariest thing to my
Trans
parents.
was more so than being queer.
Absolutely. I didn't really come out as gay. My mother came out for me.
Really?
Yes. She was my high school counselor my first year of
How was that?
freshman year because I went to the public school before I moved to the art school. I loved it. I've always loved my parents. I've never been one of those people who like got embarrassed of them. Like,
Okay.
but like even elementary school, I was like, come up to school and bring us lunch. And like I had the cool dad that would bring everyone McDonald's, you know?
Nice,
So
nice.
I've never been embarrassed that way.
But they saw you having boyfriends and stuff. Or
They did, and they were super supportive of that. Super
you guys
supportive
never
of
spoke
that.
about it. They just kind of knew what it was. And
Well, so like when my coming out happened, I went into my mom's office after school one day and it was like bawling. And I had gone on a field trip and she knew that I like had liked this boy even though I never had expressed it. And I don't know, it was like a mother's intuition. She just knew that something had gone on between Thomas and I. And she was like, have you figured out that you're gay? So like that was how I came out. Was like my mother being like, have you figured this out yet? So coming out as a drag queen was pretty hard. They weren't thrilled about it because they paid for my college education, which was like $50,000 a year. I went to CalArts. Do you know it?
I've
It's
heard
out
of
by
it.
Magic Mountain.
Okay.
It's like 40 minutes from LA. An amazing school.
What were you supposed to go to school for?
Always dance.
Okay, dance. Okay,
They were super cool
it was
with
for
that.
the BFA for the dance.
For
Okay,
dance and
okay, okay.
choreography. But when I came out as a drag queen, they were just like, we paid all that money for you to have a classical training education, and now you want to put on heels and flit about like a gay? Like, are you kidding me? But eventually, they began to realize that it really is an art form and that a lot of my training actually helped me because I'd never danced in high heels. But I say to people now, it's like, if you want to dance in high heels, get in a ballet class. Learn how to be on your box, learn how to be on your toes.
Yeah, it gives you posture and composure
Absolutely.
for sure.
Yeah.
I can tell sometimes when somebody is a ballet dancer, but it's how their posture.
I know. I drive like an
Yeah.
old white woman. I sit up straight, but it's the training, And
Yeah.
I'm ultimately so grateful for that. And as I try to redirect my career now back into the dance world, I'm just so grateful that I grew up with dance history and have knowledge of all these different things in dance because that's really been how I, attacked the drag community was with my dancing.
How did you come out as Laganja Estranja?
So let's see. Like I was in college smoking a lot of weed, normally, classic.
Let me just.
And there was a thing called CalArts is Burning. So there's a very popular documentary called Paris is Burning, which is all about the ballroom culture back in New York in the late 70s, early 80s. And specifically, trans women of color. They're definitely featured in the documentary.
Yeah, it's a great doc.
Amazing doc for anyone who hasn't seen it. Paris is Burning. So CalArts wanted to do an ode to the film and host their very first drag ball in many, many years. So I decided that, I wanted to come out as Laganja Estranja and perform. And that was really how I started, was on my college stage one night towards the end of the year. And
But you hadn't done drag yet.
No.
You
no.
were a queer?
I would dress up as a female for parties, and I had begun exploring it at Halloween.
As like an outfit idea,
Yeah,
not
just
as
for
an
fun.
identity.
Not as an identity, not as a performer, not as a job by any means.
Right.
So once I did that first performance, I always say drag chose me. I didn't choose it. Like it was like a bug that bit me, and I became obsessed with it. And I entered a amateur contest here in Los Angeles, and the prize was if you won, you got to become like a regular showgirl in their cast.
Okay.
So that is exactly what happened. I won, and I became a regular showgirl in their cast. And every other week, I had to perform and have a new number and a new look. And so I slowly but surely started to build up my repertoire and my portfolio as a performer. And then I'd say 6 months into it, I decided to audition for RuPaul's Drag Race.
And you got on the first one?
I got on the first try.
How did that feel?
Like destiny. A lot of people would be like, I felt so lucky. I felt so this. I felt like, for me, it's like, I remember getting the call from them and them being like, you're accepted to Drag Race. And I definitely was excited and I screamed, but I also felt like I was like reclaiming my future and my history, and it felt right. Like I was like, yeah, of course I got on. Like I'm fucking badass, and I should be on this show.
Yes.
You know.
Yes.
And so it felt correct, as the kids say. And yeah, it was an amazing experience. It changed my life, and because of that show, you know, I've been doing drag professionally since 2014, and haven't had,
amazing.
you know, a real job since.
How is RuPaul?
Well, I'll be honest, we don't really get to meet him. He's very much like on the other side and has an earpiece in and is very professional and does his job. There's not a lot of, you know, back and forth communication between him and the contestants, which of course now makes sense. But as a young child, I was very disappointed and like
You
thought
y'all
I
were
was
gonna
going
be
to have Ru's
besties.
number in my
Yeah,
phone,
yeah.
you know? But at the end of the day, you know, RuPaul shopped RuPaul's Drag Race for 10 years before someone accepted that show.
Wow.
So he's had a lot of fighting to do, not only for himself as a black gay man, but for the community at large. And that's why I feel so grateful to have had him in my corner, whether it was personally or professionally. The fact is, I wouldn't be where I am today if it wasn't for him.
What does he mean to the? He goes by him, right?
Uh-huh.
So what does RuPaul mean to the LGBTQ community, from your perspective?
Well, you know, you ask different people, you're going to get different
From you.
opinions. From me, he means the world. You know, he took this art form that was underground, that happened Friday to Sunday nights, and he made it something that could be on television on a Monday night. You know, back when I was on Drag Race, it came out on a Monday night. Now it's been moved to a primetime TV slot on Fridays. But, you know, to me, he changed the landscape. He made it okay for me to not only be queer, but to be trans. And he made it acceptable for mainstream people to love drag and to appreciate the art form. And I think that's like so incredible. You know, right now on the current season, they have a straight man who does drag. And there's been a lot of
the first openly straight
openly straight man. And there's been a lot of controversy surrounding this because, you know, trans women for so long were not on the show. And the fight or the argument is that, like, well, we should have another trans person on the show, not a straight person that has nothing to do with this art form. And I hear that. But again, as I was saying earlier, my opinions are always a little different than a lot of people in my community. And I think the show's crossed over into mainstream society. So I think it's incredible that we have a contestant on there that's straight, because I know a lot of straight men who watch the show with their girlfriends or just because they like it. And by having a reflection of themselves now on the show, maybe it will give them permission to put their arms in the air or to be a little bit more feminine because they're seeing this straight man does it and he has a girlfriend and he's not being made fun of for.
Yeah, you don't need to be
And I think
Asian
that's
to
really
be a ninja.
beautiful.
It's like it's an art form. Like you're just so for those who don't understand the difference, drag and trans
Right.
are two different things.
Absolutely.
Trans is an identity. It's
Yep.
who you are. Drag is an activity.
Right. Exactly.
And that's why him being on the show is important, because it shows that that activity is valid, not
For
just
anyone.
for the queer community.
Right.
Because at first it was like, hey, America, check out what the queer community is doing.
Right.
But now it's like, no. A straight guy can do it.
Exactly. And I think that's
it's
great.
expensive.
I think that's great. And, you know, a lot of people would say, well, that's ruining the art form. And what made our art form so special is that it was underground and that it was for, you know, people who were in minority groups and cast away. But what I say is it still is.
Technically, he's a minority. Straight guys doing drag
He's a minority in that group for sure. But what I say is, you know, the more the merrier. And I think it's such a beautiful thing that we're living in a society where a straight man can proudly get on TV, talk about his girlfriend, and then turn into a woman and compete with all the other sissies. I think that's beautiful.
Is Tyler Perry considered drag?
With Medea?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So that's drag.
Absolutely.
It's funny because it's not referred to as drag
Well, because that's
in mainstream media.
demasculating or emasculating.
It's just a Tyler Perry playing a Medea.
Right.
But technically speaking,
Absolutely.
you could count that as drag.
100%.
So it's just the art form of.
Dressing up. Yeah. I love it.
So Halloween is the ultimate mainstream.
So that's how I started.
Drag.
You know, Halloween is a time where I think many feel comfortable to explore drag without being judged. And that's exactly how I started. At my college, every Halloween, I started dressing up as a girl. And then it trickled into the Thursday night art opening parties. And then the next thing you knew, I'd created a character. So,
This year for Halloween, I went as a king.
Okay.
And I had this really nice like fur thing that went this way and the whole setup. And I liked it so much when I went to the club, I was like, I should just wear this out more. And I've worn it a couple more times, and it feels nice. It's like I'm putting on this cape, and I'm like, I'm going out as like this accentuated version of myself.
I think, again, people forget that, not even 40 years ago, people put a lot of effort into the way they dressed and presented. And I think not just for vanity reasons, but because of the way it makes us feel, right? And for me, again, that's why I was so addicted to drag, is because of the way it made me feel. And because it gave me the acceptance to put on these fabulous clothes that I normally gravitate towards, but that I know I'm not really supposed to wear during the day because most people are going to be in a black hoodie and gray sweatpants. But I learned for myself, I'm Carrie Bradshaw in Sex and the City, and I'm going to wear a ball gown to the grocery store because I am fabulous, and life is too short to need a character or to need a way to explain that to someone.
You don't need a reason to dress up.
No, if you want to wear your king's cape out to the club one night, I say go for it.
Yes.
I say go for it.
And it felt so right. It felt so freeing.
Yeah.
And you could almost make a technical argument that the reason that we've been programmed to think that men are supposed to be this way, that way, is kind of like, okay, you know how like we say, like when I wear my king's outfit, I feel a certain way when I go to the club.
Right.
I think that we've been made to be so limited because of it's the reverse.
Right.
They say, no, you only wear blue, you only wear pink. You only do this, you only do that. It's the same idea.
Well, it's because the people who made that up realized that freedom ultimately could be taxed and priced. And so they figured out a way to divide us and to, be misogynistic, to be racist, and to put us in all these different sectors so that they could remain at the top of the food chain. That's what I believe.
Yeah. And it's funny because I also think that same thing about psychedelics. When I started doing mushrooms and LSD, I realized, I was like, now I know why it's illegal. It frees your mind. Mm-hmm. I can't imagine somebody being a soldier about to go overseas to a war, taking mushrooms and going on with it. They'd be like, what the fuck am I doing?
Right.
Like, I should be helping these people. Why am I shooting them? Like, what's going on here? Like, it frees the mind, and that's why they made it illegal. But now there's a lot of studies about it being therapeutic. At Johns Hopkins, it's like
microdosing is a huge conversation right now, especially in the cannabis community.
Yeah.
I've yet to do it. I'm intrigued by it. I did a lot of drugs in the earlier years of my life.
Well, you've done shrooms.
I've done shrooms. I've done acid. I've never done meth or crack or heroin, but pretty much everything else I've tried.
Me neither of those three. Yeah,
pretty much everything else I've tried.
Yeah.
And I'm at the point in my life where I'm just not really interested. Weed is all I need. That's like perfect for me. But microdosing has definitely piqued my interest, and the research that I'm seeing, it does seem very effective.
Well, I think it's definitely something to look into.
Yeah.
Because we all have different minds and chemicals, right? So some people don't have the brain chemistry to even smoke weed. If they smoke weed, it'll throw them the fuck off. So they shouldn't.
I mean, that's like 10%, but yes.
Yes, for some people that happens. I smoke weed often.
Like 90% of people should smoke weed, but yes, there's a 10% where no, it's not going to work for you.
Psychedelics actually helped me stop partying with other stuff.
Interesting.
When I started doing psychedelics, it kind of brought me back to me.
Yeah.
People
have told me to try microdosing for quitting cigarettes.
It might help.
That's what I've heard.
You know what it does? Is it allows you to have a refreshed look at things. It breaks the pattern.
Yeah.
You did shrooms. You were on the bank. I saw your clip about going to the Banksy.
Yes. Yeah, no, I used to love them and think they were amazing. I just think now I'm at such a different point in my life where, being out, like not in control of my own body does not excite me.
Well, you started early. I was the opposite. I was straight edge till I was in my 20s.
Okay.
I didn't even get drunk till I was 21. I didn't smoke weed till I was in my mid-20s.
Wow.
My first time doing shrooms or acid, I was like almost 30,
Oh, yeah.
So
no, I moved to California
way.
18 and was like, what do we got? Where's it at? I'm ready to try it.
I was the opposite way. I was really into like personal development and Tony Robbins and self-help and psychology and all these things. And I did all that like sober. So then once I got into psychedelics, it felt like a cheat code. It felt like, well, I know about psychology. So then when I do shrooms, I'm like psychoanalyzing my own trip.
Sure.
And I'm like, oh.
But it informed you, you know?
Yeah. It felt like when when I first moved to LA and I tried other drugs, it felt like they were lying to me.
I can relate.
The drug experience itself.
I can relate.
It felt like we're gonna inflate reality, and the next day the hangover, it feels like shit, and if you're wasted, and I was like, ugh. And that's why I really stopped drinking. I mean, I'm having wine tonight, but I'd probably drink like once a month, maybe a couple times a month. Yeah, you look at me. Maybe twice a month. I smoke weed every day, but drinking has gone down a lot. But when I did psychedelics, it was the opposite of the other drugs.
Yeah.
When I did psychedelics, it was like, whoa, I got to feel what it felt like the real me was.
Sure.
Like I've never made a bad decision on psychedelics. When I
Can't
was
say the
younger,
same.
when I was younger, I had like taken Molly and made some bad decisions where I'm like, oh my God, I was acting too wild last night, But I've been like about to go to a party and then taking psychedelics and then been like, you know what? I need to stretch, clean my house and call my mom and journal or something,
Nice.
And then I just changed. But that's just how it affects me.
Yeah.
So nowadays, you smoke weed?
Just the weed for me, yeah.
Nothing else.
I like alcohol. I have a love-hate relationship with alcohol. Unfortunately, when I got off my season of RuPaul's Drag Race, the first one, season 6, I definitely was abusing substances, like
Yeah.
all of them. And alcohol was always like the courier, which led to all the other things. So I was sober for 3 years, didn't drink, didn't party, nothing. I still smoked weed, but that's medicine. So I've never counted that like against my sobriety. And then eventually, I started incorporating alcohol into my life, and I learned modesty and
Moderation.
that's the word I was looking for.
I learned modesty.
Yeah, I learned moderation, but can't say the word. So that's the thing is I still, sometimes have a love-hate relationship with alcohol. In my mind, I'd like to be vegan and Cali sober. But
Cali sober means you smoke weed.
Cali
and
sober
have
means like
wine.
you smoke weed or you'll have a glass of wine here or there.
Yeah.
So in my mind, I want to be those two things, but in reality, I'm like, an alcoholic who is from Texas and loves to eat fried chicken. So, it's all about working to like find the happy middle ground.
Yeah.
And,
I mean, life is short.
yeah.
We have to enjoy it, but just understand the balance. You know,
Yes.
when we were young, we were told so many things were healthy for us that really weren't. Like milk doesn't help your bones. It takes away calcium. Like there's so many,
Sure.
the food pyramid, like so many things that we thought were one way were really another.
Right.
When I was in school, the teachers were saying, don't smoke weed and don't play video games. Now there's like multi-millionaire video gamers that on Twitch who then invest their money in weed stocks. Like it's so, who's to say what's right or wrong? I think
Agreed.
you just
You
have to
find what's
understand
right for yourself.
for your body. Yeah, exactly.
But ultimately, I'm going to be vegan and Cali sober. That's like the dream.
that's the dream.
I really want to be that way.
You aspire to be vegan because you think of what it's going to represent, or you actually believe
because I
in
think
it?
of all of my vegan friends who are happy and healthy and living a better life because of it.
Do you ever think about the fact that plants are living and dead? What if they feel the pain as well? Like when you're chopping down
I've never been one
broccoli.
of those who's like, I'm going to go vegan because I care about animals' feelings.
Okay.
That's never been my MO. It's more about a healthy thing because I love fried chicken. Like, it's my
Me too.
favorite.
That's all I eat is chicken.
favorite
I'm
food.
chicken, rice, and beans all
Oh,
day.
see, I like it all. Beef, fish,
Okay.
pork. Sign me up. I'm from Texas. We eat meat. But ultimately, I've had vegan fried chicken, and it's amazing.
Is it?
So, yes.
I've never had vegan fried chicken.
It's called
Is it like chicken?
Lettuce Feast.
Or
It's actually in North Hollywood. They have like a vegan fair. Probably not right now because of Corona, but they used to. Every Sunday they'd have a vegan fair, and there was a one spot that like specialized in fried chicken that's vegan, and it was amazing. And after you ate it, you didn't feel sick because a lot of times after you eat fried chicken, you get that like thing in your stomach, and you're like, oh,
Yeah.
too much grease, too much this. You didn't get that,
Right.
And it was amazing. So I know that the possibility is out there. I just think for me it'll probably be like vegan Monday through Friday, Saturday and Sunday we go in and you eat whatever you want and have a drink or two. That'll be like how I see my future.
I love it.
Yeah.
How else do you see your future? What are your goals?
I have many, many goals. I'm an overachiever, so I am always working in different arenas of my life. So I love to be an EGOT, win an Emmy and a Tony and an Oscar and a Grammy. Yeah, I got them all, right?
Yeah.
So I want to choreograph for Broadway. I would like to direct Cirque du Soleil one day. I would like to have a very vibrant musical career as a pop star and go on tour with dancers and have my own show with pyrotechnics and the whole nine. I would love to eventually have a husband, maybe a child, although the older I get, the more I'm like, probably not a child, but definitely a family of some sort, right? A husband, a
Yes.
dog, a house, that kind of vibe.
Your dog, though, not his dog.
Thank you. I'm glad you know. Although I feel like that'll happen like once my dog has passed away. I've got like a lot more years. So like if they have a dog at that point, then I'm open.
Okay.
It's not a deal breaker, okay?
It's a preference.
I definitely also like really want to, like I said, have a dispensary and really expand my brand in the cannabis world. You know, not only having my own dispensary, but also like my own pre-rolls and wax and a lifestyle brand. And, you know, that's something you mentioned, I think earlier, that I have my own clothing line.
Yeah.
And that's, again, another passion of mine. I'd love to do runways and be designing. So yeah, I have many goals. There's never a shortage of goals. I'm always adding to that list.
I'm the same way. It's never done.
No.
I feel like I'm called to do this stuff.
Me too.
Like every day, I'm like, oh, well, now we have to do this, and we have to create this. It doesn't feel right to me if I don't create it.
Right.
Most of the money I spend, I give gifts to myself. They're just like more equipment,
Yeah.
or more ability to do my art.
I call it the Lady Gaga. It's reinvesting in yourself.
Yes.
That's what she did. And now look at her.
Is she your favorite artist?
No, Missy Elliott.
Why?
Several reasons. She makes banging music. I mean, come on. Missy Elliott.
So does Gaga, but Missy Elliott is a whole different thing.
A different vibe.
They're different genres.
Different vibe.
Different genres, even.
Missy Elliott makes me want to drop down and get my freak on. Lady Gaga is like sour candy. It's like fun pop. So Missy for me is like, it as a dancer, it's like just what I want to dance and groove to.
Yes. Shout out to our friend Comfort.
Shout out to Comfort, right?
Yeah.
Who works with Missy Elliott. So amazing. And then also like wait, what was the question? This
Why
is
you
what
like
happens when
Missy?
you smoke weed. Right. The other reason I really like Missy Elliott is because she was able to infiltrate pop music with a real message. So I actually wrote a thesis on her in college.
Did you?
I took a class called The Hypersexualization of the Black Female Body. And it was all about how, how female bodies have been hypersexualized and how current artists like Missy Elliott have combated this ideology. So I wrote a piece on Super Duper Fly where she wears an inflatable fat suit so that her body can no longer be viewed and objectified. And so that's why I really love her, is because she's such a genius that she, subliminally hides these real messages and these real things. Get your freak on. It's all about accepting yourself for who you are, for being different. And I think that's such a beautiful mentality, but I love how she makes it mainstream in pop culture, because that's how I feel I am. I've got a real message and I've got something really intelligent to say, but I want to do it in a fun way. And I want to make people feel good about it and not feel like they're getting preached to.
Yeah. Who else do you like?
Oh my gosh, I love so many people. If we're gonna talk about just like rap artists,
Or just artists in general.
Okay, I was
yeah.
like rap
Yeah,
artists. I'm a
rappers, singers.
lady rapper person. So like Trina, Eve,
Okay.
MC Light.
Okay, so you like the old school.
I like old school
Okay,
rappers.
I'm the same way.
But I like new school rappers too, like Queen Herbie, Snow the Product. So I love new people too. But I'm also super inspired by like musical theater. So I grew up loving that. So Tommy Tune, Fred Astaire, Ginger Rogers, the Gold Diggers of 1933 that is filled with hundreds of dancers and fake violins as they're coming down the staircases. And so I'm very inspired by like that old Hollywood world too.
Yeah.
And then I'm inspired by like my best friends. I work with a collaborator named Robert Heyman, who is my best friend, and we do a lot of different artwork together. And, he's really inspired me in my career as of recent to not be afraid to be androgynous. He definitely was the first person who really started photographing me.
For those who don't know, what does that mean?
Okay, so androgynous is like the idea of both sexes. So sort of like non-binary, although non-binary usually references the fact that you're like neither. Whereas androgyny is like when you're trying to be both. So for instance, like he would shoot me with a full face of makeup and a wig. So I looked very female in the face, but then we would expose my chest. So you would see like at that time, what I called, a male nipple, a male chest. And then I would have like a skirt on. So we would be playing with this kind
Yeah.
of gender fuck is another word for it, is what androgynous is.
I like that.
So he was the first person to like really get me to photograph like that and model like that. And I think ultimately that inspired, me accepting of the fact that I was trans, because again, it showed me that my body, whether I called them breasts or pecs, was ultimately mine and for me to view. And so when I would look at these photos that he would take of me, I didn't look at it as androgynous. I looked at it as female, even though I know the most people who would look at that piece of artwork that we created and think, wait, is that a male or is that a female? And they'd question. I saw female. And so that was like
Right.
a really cool thing. And Robert has just been like an amazing friend. You know, when I go out of town on these tours and stuff, him and his partner, who's also my best friend Hector, like they take care of my dog. And, you know, they're just really good people. So good people in general inspire me. You don't have to be famous or from some old Hollywood era. Like, you know, people off the street can inspire me by just being kind.
I agree. Man, that's so true.
Yeah.
You have a very lovely personality.
Thanks.
I really like your energy.
Thanks. I'm very blessed, I think, to have learned at an early age from a lot of my mistakes. I wasn't always so open. I wasn't always so kind. I definitely grew up with a big head on my shoulders and thought I was the shit. But, you know, coming to...
I mean, you are the shit, but
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
But, you know, coming to Hollywood and being a small fish in a big pond, whereas when I was in Texas and I was a big fish in a small pond.
I felt that when I came here too. Yeah.
It
you're
really
like,
changed me
yo.
for the better, and it taught me a lot about humility and being grateful for the opportunities we have. And, you know, being in the drag community, I deal with a lot of shitheads, to be quite honest, for lack of a better word.
Within the community or
Yeah.
to the community?
Both, but mostly within the community. And I've just promised myself that I'm not going to be like that, and that I'm always going to try to be open and be present and remember, no matter how successful I get, that I'm no bigger or better than any other person. And just because I've been given this gift of talent and being able to talk and converse and be open, it doesn't mean that I don't have a ton of shit to learn.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think BLM, like, that was a huge moment for me. It really taught me, because I've always been someone who considers myself an ally. But I learned during that movement that there was a lot of things I wasn't doing and a lot of ways that I could improve my allyship. And so I think that's, to me, like what life is about is being able to hold yourself accountable first and foremost, and to like cancel yourself when you're being an asshole. And I think because I've done that to myself a lot, it's allowed me to come into my truth and be a better, nicer, more open person.
Yeah, we all have to go through that journey, right? Of getting the chip off our shoulders and realizing that it's not a happy life to go around being mad at everybody. Even if
Or
there's-
yourself.
Or ourselves, especially ourselves, right? And life is better, at least for me. When I notice that I'm being nicer, I feel better,
Me too, of course.
you know? And there's times, even though sometimes I could feel justified for being mean because I'm stressed and because of this and there's all these reasons for it, it doesn't feel good afterwards.
No. And ultimately, you know, I heard someone talk about this recently, like, are we good because we want to be good, or are we good because it feels good? And I think
That's a great question.
and I think I've suffered from that too, you know, especially with someone as a platform. And, you know, it's like we're so pressured to, you know, present as these perfect beings with this like platform. And it's like, that's just not possible. You're going to mess up. You're going to say something wrong. You're going to appropriate and not appreciate. But as long as you can be honest about that and say, look, I messed up. I think that's all we can ask of people, you know? That's why I think cancel culture in a way is good, but also is not good, because instead of canceling someone, we should be teaching them. We should be
Yes.
helping them learn why what they said or did was wrong, instead of being like, you're a bad person and you're done. And I think that is, again, something that I try to like show people is like, you know, for instance, I got accused of appropriating ballroom culture on RuPaul's Drag Race, which I did. I didn't do it knowingly. I did it unintentionally.
What do you mean ballroom culture?
So, for instance, the move that I'm known for, the way I entered RuPaul's Drag Race Season 6, was what at the time I called a death drop.
It's so epic.
Thank you.
You
Thank
should
so
run a
much.
clip of it right now. Just
There it is. There she is. But it turns out that I actually had learned the term incorrectly. I did not learn it from it's the ballroom culture teachers. I learned it from the drag community, which, let's face it, it is watered down. It's not the ballroom community, so there's no way it could ever be the same, no matter,
by ballroom, you mean like ballroom, like cha-cha Latin
No.
ballroom? You mean
like Paris is Burning ballroom.
gotcha.
Right. So where people dress up in different categories like Butch Queen and Femface and things of this nature and compete in an underground world. So that's what I mean by ball culture. So the dip, which is actually the proper term for the death drop, came from ballroom culture. And, you know, I learned very publicly that I had messed up and that I was calling it the wrong thing. And, you know, people in that community really came for me and not in the nicest way, unfortunately. And so it was very difficult for me to navigate. But ultimately, I realized as a dancer, look, I love ballroom community. I'm not trying to do anything to offend you. And instead of defending my bad teachings, I'm just going to say, you know what, you're right. It doesn't matter if I learned that term from someone of color. It doesn't matter if I learned that from someone who is queer. They are not from the community. They themselves do not know the truth. You do. You're telling it to me. And whether you're telling it to me nice or not, you're telling me the truth.
You're accepting the lesson.
And it's up to me, right, to not only accept that lesson, but then again, to use my platform to teach others. Because I see this term death drop still to this day.
So officially, it is not called the death drop.
That's right. It's called a dip, DIP.
So is death drop anything?
Like
Like the word death drop, does that
down-
mean a different move, or is that just
Nope.
a different name for the same move?
Correct. It's a different name for the same move. It's
Okay.
a watered down version. Shablam, you may have heard this one. That's also another incorrect terminology for the move. Shablam
I've
is-
heard shablam as a phrase. I didn't know it
Right.
was
So
for that.
when someone does a dip, the audience member then goes shablam. So it's more of a calling and action word.
That's funny because I've
than
used it for so many things
Of
that I never even
course.
knew.
Because again,
Wow, it
people
made it into the lexicon.
People
I
don't,
didn't-
get the proper education, and so then they take it and turn it into something that which it's not.
How do you not hurt your back when you do that? Do you
I
just
do.
fall on your ass?
No,
mostly.
I
or-
think a lot of it is so the way I do my dips is I'm famous for kicking out my leg midair and then cracking the bottom leg and falling right down on my center. So what I think a lot of it is I use my heel and I use my hands like a seesaw kind of, right? And I catch myself with those first and then let the bottom half of my body sink
just
down.
before you hit the ground, your hand like
It's like
cushions
hand,
it.
foot, butt. It all kind of like sinks in at once. But it's very dangerous, and I use a lot of CBD salve on
Do you
my
ever put like a
joints.
cushion on it? Like when you do it, you go
No.
like no knee pads, nothing. You just
Yeah.
like drop.
I raw dog it.
Ooh,
Yeah.
that's gnarly.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
amazing.
It's a lot of energy to exude that on the stage and do the jump splits and jump off platforms into splits, and it's definitely an intense routine that I bring to the stage, which is again why maybe more people will understand the older I get, the more I'm like, I'm trying to find other ways now to use my platform because I'm not trying to fall on my back like that till the day I die.
Yeah.
No, thank you.
Yeah. That's such an epic move.
Yeah. Well, it comes from an epic community. I mean, that's just the truth. The ballroom community has influenced so much of culture today. And I think that's ultimately why I was, greeted by such an aggressive response, is because they're so often unheard and they're so often used and never paid for their beautiful and eccentric ideas. That's why I love
They just wanted the recognition.
Right. That's why I loved the Showpose because, it really taught people about the community, but also more importantly, the writers, the makeup artists, they all themselves were trans and a part of the community as well. And so that to me is like where we need to be going. I understand when straight actors play someone who's gay or play someone who's trans. It's called acting for a reason, but also there's something to be said about diversifying Hollywood and hiring people that are actually trans to play a trans role. And so I'm excited to see something like a Pose be such a success as it was because I think it opens up the landscape now for more individuals to play themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Man, so much to learn. So much growth. Like, I feel like this is the most exciting time to be alive.
I do too. I literally keep saying that to people. It's like, yes, we're living in a very dark time and
But is it?
it is.
I think we're noticing and talking about the darkness.
Sure, but it's always been there.
But in a friendly way, I'm going to challenge you on
Okay,
that.
I like it. I like to be
think
challenged.
there's never been a better time to be alive.
Okay.
Pick one group of people other than white people and go back in time and tell me when it was better.
Well, I'm not a historian.
Right? It's like, I think what's happening now is that we have more access to see all the shit that's happening because it's a big world. Like 3 million people die every year.
Yeah.
Like I think just in America, is that? I think
That sounds right.
something like that, right? When we're looking at the COVID numbers, it look crazy until you think, like, there's tons of people dying all the time.
Right.
Every second, there's
Right.
a gazillion people dying. And I think we're just not equipped to handle all that information.
Yes, I agree. That's why I agree with
know?
you to say, like, have the dark times always been around and we just didn't notice them? Yes, I do agree with you on that. But I also agree, like, even though there are all these issues and there is a lot of darkness and there is a corrupt system and there is, all this racism in our systems and, fights for LGBTQ rights and all these things, there is also a lot of beautiful and there is also a lot of education and awakening and movement.
Platforms like the voice that you
Yeah,
have.
exactly.
Like these things weren't around back in the day.
No.
It wasn't even
Drag queens weren't on TV.
It
Are you
wasn't
kidding?
even
And if
a
they were a
conversation.
joke.
Yeah.
And they came out and had a low voice, and it was like a drag joke. Like it was never taken as a serious art form. So I definitely do agree though that we're living in the best time, and I'm grateful to see it. And I'm
we have a
grateful
lot of room to grow.
to see technology. And do some days I wish I would have lived without Instagram? I do, I do. But ultimately, I that's how I survived Corona. I got paid to post on Instagram and it saved my life. So
Yeah.
it's hard to be mad at something when it, saves your life during a very dark period. So I've just learned it's all about balance. It's the ebb and the flow. And, without darkness, we wouldn't have light. So we need both because ultimately it's those dark times, those sad times that make us appreciate the beautiful, happy times.
If you could send a message to your 17-year-old self from the future, what would you say?
Don't smoke cigarettes. Start saving money. Accept that you're trans. Be kinder to yourself, which will allow you to be kinder to others. And don't become obsessed with Versace. That's what I would tell myself.
Go for Gucci instead.
No, don't go for any of that shit. It's too expensive and you don't need it.
Why were you obsessed with Versace?
I still am to this day and will be till the day I die. I love it because it's gaudy. It's over the top. It is designed by an incredible gay man. It is Italian. It is sexy. It is it's engulfed by the rap community that I love and appreciate so much.
Versace, yeah.
Yeah, I just think it's the only brand for me. Medusa head day till I die.
And let's channel a message for the world watching right now who maybe just if they made it this far, they got to know a lot about you, right? But just a message to the people that may not understand fully what the trans movement is about. What do you really hope to be understood about that movement? What do you wish that the rest of the world would appreciate more about what you and your community are going through?
I guess the message would be that trans people are people and deserve equal rights and acceptance just like everyone else. And that ultimately, by accepting trans and understanding where we're coming from, you're going to be able to accept a part in yourself that's going to help you live a better life too.
I love that. I love that.
Short, sweet, and simple to the point today. Usually it's long, but today I think that's that's what I think.
And what about for the trans people that are watching who may or may not be out, but that are going through the typical struggles of that community?
Sure. My message to them would be to breathe, to know that you're perfectly beautiful as you are, no matter where you are along in your journey, and that ultimately to find joy. I think the trans community is surrounded by a lot of harboring of hate, and it's very easy for us to develop tough skin to combat that. And so I would just challenge the trans community to do the opposite. And instead of, build a wall, break that down, not only for others, but for yourself so that you can be happier. I think laughter is the best medicine. And I fully believe in taking life seriously, being professional and working hard. But I also believe in being absolutely silly, balls to the walls, nonchalant with life. You got to be both. And I think because trans is such a main buzzword right now and is such a topic that a lot of times people forget to have fun with it. And ultimately, I'm having fun being a third gender. I'm having fun with the fact that, I'm not the same and I am different. And I think it's a really beautiful place to be in existence. And while it may come with its scary moments, it's a lot of fun and it's very freeing. And I think freedom is what we all want here.
Yes. That's beautiful. Thank you so much for coming.
Of course.
I really appreciate this conversation. I felt like I learned a lot about you.
I'm so happy to have been here. You know, I saw you on Instagram. I watched just a couple of clips of different individuals speaking, and I was like, wow, he really gets it. He's bringing, you know, diverse voices to the forefront and allowing people to speak about their industries in a very intimate way. And I think we need, you know, more of that. So I'm so grateful to you for allowing me to share my story with your followers and vice versa, because I think as artists, it's really all about supporting one another. Because there's room enough for all of us. That's one thing I've learned from the drag community. We're very competitive to fight to get to the top. And the truth of the matter is, it's not about being at the top. It's really about building a community so that when you get to where you're going, you look back or you look next to you and you have all your friends and family with you. And so I could just tell that about you. I could tell that you were supporting people in your circle and that you were giving them a voice to speak out about whatever it may be. And yeah, I wanted to be a part of that. So thanks for having me.
Oh, I'm so happy for us doing this. I hope that people out there really appreciate not only who you are as an artist, as a person, as a creator, as a leader, you know, as just an entity of love.
Thanks. I love that. And as an entrepreneur, don't forget
And as
that.
an entrepreneur.
Because I'm on my way to that $8 million house in Malibu. You best believe it.
Yes, and I like that you're unapologetic about who you are.
Yeah.
You know, in all the different ranges of who you are, you know, and that you shared so much with us here today.
Absolutely. I spent a lot of my life apologizing, and those days are long gone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. So, final phrase of the show, final word is on you.
Well, I'll just keep it simple. Let's get sickening. Oh,
Love it. Thank you, everybody. And where can they find you?
You can find me on all social platforms at Laganja Estranja, except for TikTok, because I was a little late to that game, so I'm the only Laganja Estranja on that platform. And of course, check out my website, laganjaestranja.com, where you can find lots more information about me, but more importantly, you can go visit my online store and get you some of that lifestyle brand, baby.
Yes, buy those products, support the community. You know, you want to do some good, start here.
That's right. Support small-owned trans businesses.
I love it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.